When our kids were little, one of my favorite things to do was to stack up all these blocks, and then we'd get like this indoor Nerf baseball bat and like crash and knock them nail down, and then just like do it again over and over again. I don't know if you have kids or grandkids and they like to play that game, but the crash game is real. And I think about that, and I think about what I hear people talking about with the housing market, that this thing is going to crash. It's built on hay and all going to get knocked down with some type of massive momentum move. And I hear that quite a bit. Today, we're going to talk about that. Is Olympia's housing market going to crash?
Actually, we do know quite a bit, and we're going to share with you some very interesting information about the housing market in this area and how it compares with the national market and some of the things that you have been hearing. That is the question that is on most people's minds, especially when they are considering buying and selling a house. So in this video, we are going to cut through all the junk, and we're going to give you some actual stats. We're going to talk about the national market and the local market so that you can make the most informed decision when it's time to sell or buy your next home.
We're Joe and Charity. We're local realtors, and we help people just like you every week who are looking to either buy or sell a home in the South Puget Sound area. So we want to give you the insider scoop of what the real facts are about the housing market in our area.
So let's jump into the first thing, which is, how does the national market compare with our local market here in Olympia?
Well, they are not the same, although they are connected.
Starting off with point number one, what you are hearing in the news.
And by news, we mean anything from TikTok to social media or the national media coverage. You are going to get a wide variety and a lot of panic. And panic really is because it's clickbait. It's what sells, and I understand that. However, it's not helpful when you're trying to make informed decisions. On a national level, you will hear people talk about specific markets, and they're going down under, and it's horrible, and you should never buy. And they make blanket statements that make people think, well, is this everywhere at all times, and this is like the trend? The reality is that's not true. There have been some national markets that have been overinflated. Austin was one of them. There's parts of Florida, there's parts of Colorado that have had these type of overheated market that really did drive prices up. And as interest rates went up, things cooled down. And in some of those areas, you have seen home price depreciation. However, that is not across all markets equally or even close to generally what's taking place in the housing market.
So what's interesting about this graph that we're showing you is that it shows you that, yes, the housing market has basically gotten to the point of inventory where we're crossing 2020. But it's really hard to see. But if you look in the gray lines, the previous years of 2020, inventory was much higher. And then it started to go down and down. And an inventory problem is not what anybody wants.
Yeah.
It created the problem that we had during the pandemic, where there were not enough homes to be sold and the prices were escalating. Most of the houses in our area were selling for at least $20,000. That was a good deal if you could only write an offer for $20,000 over. But most of them were in that $40,000 to $50,000 over, and nobody wants to see that happen again.
Now, what happened in our region as well as across the nation is the number of homes on the market had been steadily declining since basically 2013. And not enough new homes were being built, and that continued to grow and grow. And that deficit of housing, like you'll see on the graph, is the problem. And so when we have a bump in inventory, it's a good thing, actually. We were running on 2 weeks of inventory during some of the pandemic times. And 2 weeks of inventory, that means all the houses on the market would sell out in 2 weeks. And then there would be nothing on the market. We'll share with you in a minute what specifically that looked like in our market, but that was happening all across America because we stopped building as many homes as what was needed to keep up the demand of new people wanting to come to the market, the population growth of the country in general. So a lot of things affected this and made it very difficult during that brief period of the COVID unicorn years.
So overall, what you're hearing on the news does reference that inventory is higher, but the hype is way out of proportion for what is actually happening. We're actually moving towards a balanced market. We haven't even reached a balanced market yet.
We are still nationally a couple months of inventory away from being a balanced market. A balanced market is usually 4 to 6 months of homes. That's much different than the 2 weeks I mentioned earlier. 4 to 6 months means that you have opportunity to go take a look at a home, think about it maybe for a couple weeks and then put an offer in, and you're going to be able to negotiate deals, which is a perfect home for what your needs are for the life that you're living. So we look at that, and I think it's a good thing where we're at. And actually, if we have a little bit more inventory growth, that's even going to help things become even better.
Let's take all that national information and break it down a little bit smaller into the Olympia market. And the first thing that we want to share about Olympia is that we have local pricing stability here in comparison to the things that we've talked about with the national market.
Now, what's great about the Olympia market specifically is we got heated up. It just wasn't overheated, and it didn't grow beyond people's capacity to be able to afford a home. That is really a prime factor here. So when the interest rates did go up and things did slow down as far as transaction volume, it didn't cause any profound crash. It just caused people to reconsider their timing of when they're either going to buy or sell their home. So it's been very, very stabilized since those interest rates gone up. That's really great for our region.
And a big part of that pricing stability comes down to who's buying and selling homes here, which brings us to our third point, which is sustainable buyer demographics in our area.
This is where I think it does anchor our market pretty profoundly. A lot of the jobs in our community are government related. We're a state capital, and so that you'll find that that helps stabilize it because those are usually consistent, stable jobs that people are at for years. We also have JBLM, and so we have military families that are moving and, fascinating enough, love it so much, want to stay here once they've gotten out of the military. So that helps our region just have a consistent, stable market that people could trust in and know that it's basically going to be the same thing, just a little bit higher next year, and that type of continuation. And that's what we've seen over the last several years, and it continues in our future.
Another thing that stabilizes it is the desirability of our area. So you're watching this video because you're thinking about moving to the area, and so are a lot of other people. People have discovered that Olympia is a gem that's a little bit hidden. It's lower priced than basically anything around it that offers you kind of a waterfront, chill lifestyle. And people are moving here from the Seattle area, the Tacoma area, and also people are moving here from multiple other states, and that creates a lot of sustainability. And when they get here, they love it. So it's not like they're moving like people did back during COVID to Florida to escape something, and then they realize that they don't want crocodiles and they don't want large bugs.
Yeah.
People are moving here and they absolutely love it. So it really stabilizes our area.
Oh, for sure. So how has Olympia handled the pressure of higher interest rates? Well, that's going to be our next point that we're going to dive into because we have adapted our strategies on behalf of our clients.
So let's dive into a little bit more about what that means. What are people doing to adjust their strategy to basically still be able to buy a home here in the area with the higher interest rates?
One of the things that does help our buyers deal with higher interest rates is getting some of their closing costs paid. As many of you know, there are closing costs that are associated with purchasing a home. And usually that means having cash on hand that you bring to the closing table. But when we ask sellers to help pay closing costs, that keeps more money in your pocket and reduces your overarching expense in the purchase of a new home.
Yeah, that's really important because during COVID, you couldn't get sellers to pay closing costs. There's no reason for them to because people were offering them $40,000 more than their house was listed for. But now I would say most of the offers that I am writing are asking the sellers to pay closing costs, unless there's that one unicorn house that everybody wants the weekend, and that we are still getting some multiple offers in that situation. But it really puts the buyer in a position where they've got more money on hand. Maybe not that they actually needed it, but they might need it to do some repairs on a home. Now, a lot of times buyers go in and they want a home that is move-in ready, but sometimes people have had to adjust their expectations with the affordability going down, with the interest rates going up. So they end up needing to get a house that may need a little bit of work, maybe some cosmetic things that they would like to do. So asking for those closing costs gives them that money back in their pocket, usually around $15,000, where they can get the things done that they want done. And that has been a really great strategy for our buyers.
And there's not just repairs that sometimes need to be done, because sometimes they don't at all. What buyers usually want to do is to make that home their home. And so having a little bit extra cash on hand to maybe paint a few walls or put in some flowers that you would like, or just the unique touches that make the home your home, that's what we're finding is super helpful for our clients.
Another strategy that we are seeing people use is house hacking. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can house hack, but one of them is to move into a house and live there for a couple years, with the goal of eventually doing some fixing, like we had talked about,
Sweat equity,
and then selling it and moving on to the next one. And in that case, you don't have to worry about capital gains tax. We're not CPAs, so consult your CPA. But you get to do that every 2 years and you can move on to another house. So that works for people who are handy, because if you have to hire contractors, that usually doesn't work. But the other way that people are house hacking is by buying a house that has a spot that they can rent out. And in our area, that is called an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. And accessory dwelling units are fantastic. They not only work for renting it out as an Airbnb, but you could have a long-term renter. You could also have family members live there. And that basically reduces your mortgage costs, because you've got somebody paying $1,000 or $2,000 a month just to live in that spot that's right out in your backyard. What's really great about the ADU situation in our area is that the laws have recently been changed. And so everybody has the opportunity to put one on their property. Might not be in your budget right away, but it could be something that you plan for in the future so that you can make some money off of the extra space. In addition, people will also do the same sort of concept by turning a certain space in their house to a rental. I know that's not for everybody, because not everybody wants to have other people around them in their house, but it is a way that people are able to still buy a house in the market with interest rates as they are. Another strategy that people are using to deal with the higher interest rates is to look at different loans or programs that can benefit them. One of them is a down payment assistance program, and Washington State has that. And you don't necessarily have to be a first-time home buyer. It does offer you the opportunity to get about your down payment covered, like 3.5%, or those closing costs. There are some details that go into it, and we're happy to explain that to you if you just comment first-time home buyer or down payment assistance program. But that's one way that people are making the move still. And then in addition to that, there's other type of loans that sometimes people don't even think about, like a USDA loan, which gives you the opportunity to get into a home with not very much cash. And those are properties that are just a little bit more rural, and it really don't have to get outside of Olympia to get to those properties. There are definitely some other strategies as well that are dependent on your vocation. So if you need more information, we can connect you with a lender that would be happy to help.
With that said, let's look at why Olympia's long-term market has stability built into it. And that really comes from how our local economy is set up. We mentioned this earlier, but I want to circle back with a little bit more depth of why our market is far more stable than other markets and why we will continue to be that way. And that first starts with our strategic location. It is great being about an hour south of Seattle and about 2 hours north of Portland in this really beautiful little corner of the world. And our home prices here are much lower than those two large areas. And because of that location, you could telecommute from here. You could work a couple days in Seattle, or if you need to be close to I-5 and go in either direction, depending on what your job requires of you, you are perfectly located. And that's what people are coming to discover and find. I truly don't think the Olympia market is one that has been fully seen for the value that it offers for people who come here. And to highlight that point is people in the military, when they get out in our area, over 30% of them choose to stay in this area because they love it so much. And that's what we're finding is once you get here, you taste, it is gorgeous and amazing, and people just love to stay.
And they're the ones that know, because they've been all over the country. So if anybody knows where the best place is, they would. Some of them have even been to Hawaii, so.
And we're better. I think we're better.
I know, so much better.
We have orcas that swim around in our areas. I mean, they have whales, but not as cool as ours.
On top of that, as we mentioned earlier, we do have the stability of it being the state capital. Over 30% of the jobs are connected to the state capital, so that stability really rings true in this area. In fact, we had a net growth of around 3,000 people to our county last year, which may not sound like a lot, but we are not shrinking.
That is
we are growing, and people are loving to live here, and there's really no reason to leave once you get here. We are finding that people that are moving out of the area are usually doing so for a job or family situations, or maybe some people that want a little bit more sun. So that would be the only reason. But overall, once people get here, they are loving it and they're staying.
And as further as the Olympia region, it has done a fantastic job with creating new type of opportunities. We've highlighted this in one of our videos that you'll want to take a look at. But in essence, the synopsis is that we have high-tech jobs that are moving into the area. We're becoming a more diverse economic base for people coming in. So our long-term stabilizing factor in the economy is really something that's great for people who are considering moving here.
One thing that I think is interesting to note for any of you who are watching our video that are in the Seattle area, that once people have lived in Seattle and have moved to Olympia, They absolutely love it. They still have the feel of being here in the Pacific Northwest, but they're noticing that it's so much better. Besides being less expensive, so much better. In fact, last weekend we were at the South Sound Artist Studio Tour, and we had some amazing conversations with artists who had formerly lived in Seattle, and they love it here because the studio space is so much cheaper, and there's such a great community of artists in our area. We were able to talk to some artists that are just world renowned. They're doing things for the Queen. They're doing things in New York. Their artwork is absolutely beautiful, and I'd say almost everyone we had conversation with talk about the affordability of living and doing art here in our area.
Yeah, which is amazing. We love that in our community. So if you like that type of artistic scene and being a creator of content, this is a great place where you're going to find other like-minded people just like you.
And there's another crucial factor that makes Olympia different than the national market, and that has to do with our next point, which is our supply and demand balance.
I had mentioned before, during the COVID years, we had a reduction of inventory down to like 2 weeks, which is terrible. That's not a market that you actually want to be in. And over the last 3 years, our month's supply has grown, but it's grown slow and steady. We're basically about 2.5 months of inventory currently. And like I said earlier on the video, 6 months or 4 months is about a balanced market. So we are in a good spot here to where it is a natural supply, but we are not over-inundated with new homes. However, it does give you the opportunity to be able to take a look at a house, to view it, to see if it's something that you really could see yourself living in and not necessarily miss out on it and see something else coming next week and then get the one that works best for you and your desires.
Yeah, it's so great to work with buyers right now. During COVID, it was so fast and you had to make a decision within a half an hour sometimes, and then you had to just throw everything into it. So you were waiving inspection. Yeah, the kitchen sink maybe wasn't even part of it. You were offering way above. You were agreeing to pay over. If there was a low appraisal, there was so much craziness going on. But now people just get to think about it. Average days on market here is about 38 days instead of 5 days during that time. So that means that not everybody is ready to write an offer the first time they see the house. They might have to go back and see it a couple times, which is important if you are a seller to remember that things are different right now and your expectations need to be, a little around a month or more to get your house sold.
Now, what's interesting about that is she's talking about the average days on market. Now, the median days on market is actually 9 days. Now, what does that mean? That means that sometimes houses are coming to the market are perfectly priced, price, location, condition, all meet that criteria perfectly, and they're gone the first weekend, and sometimes with multiple offers. There is sometimes that clients will use a historic strategy, especially if they haven't sold a house in years, to where they'll price it high with called aspirational prices, and then they'll bring it down a little bit. Now, we normally don't recommend that, but we do still see that as a strategy some people use. And because of that, those homes will sit on the market for 2 or 3 weeks, have a price reduction, and then sell when they get closer to what their true market reality is. Now, we see that statistically because the homes in our area are selling at 98.1% of list price. Basically, that means priced right with the median days. It goes quickly. If it's not correctly priced, then it's going to take a few weeks, and then it'll sell with a price reduction, a very minor one.
Finally, let's talk about what that means for you. If you are moving here from another area and you're watching the market, you may see that your favorite houses are jumping off the market fast, and it may feel like, oh man, I'm missing out. But really, you're not. Like we said, those houses are the ones that are really priced well, and they are in the perfect condition that weekend. Let me talk about that weekend real quick, because every time you list a home, the weekend that it goes on the market is so important.
Most important.
It is, because you're competing against the other houses that are popping up that weekend. Everybody's ready and waiting for the new houses.
That's right.
And if yours is the most beautiful, perfect, priced well one, well, then yours is going to be the one that gets multiple people's attention. However, just because you see those houses that you love pop off the market doesn't mean there's not opportunity for you. There's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, and we are seeing, it's a little bit slower pace for sure, but we are seeing new homes coming to the market every week. And we like to encourage our clients, hey, make sure that you get the one that you really like. We don't like the pushy or fear of missing out type of strategy. We would rather help you find the home that really works for you. That's the perfect situation. And then let's go after that one. Maybe there's going to be a couple, depending on the weekend, that you really love and you have some options, which is fantastic. And that puts you in a place where you're in control of the outcomes that you're really, truly looking for.
And I would say definitely give yourself some time. With the clients that we've been working with who have been moving from out of the area, it has taken them probably a couple weeks to a few months to find exactly the house they want. But what's really great about that is it is exactly the house that they want, as Joe was mentioning.
Yeah. Every week, Charity and I joke about this, is there's a perfect home on some place that is just right for someone. We always think that these, oh my gosh, I could see myself living there. It's a terrible part about being a realtor is because you see all these houses and you could love them all. And what we find with our clients is as they get into the cadence of trusting like more homes are going to come up, or if this is the perfect one, let's act now. It really keeps you in the driver's seat, and that's where you want to be.
So that's you. If you're watching this video because you are considering moving to the area, and the video has been helpful for you because you were a little bit worried about the crash, but now you're feeling, oh, this does seem like a really good place to move, then of course we have made ourselves very available for you to get all of your questions answered. Just use the phone number on the screen below. You can text us, call us. You can also email us, and you can get all the information you need in the description below.
We've highlighted the Olympia market in this video. However, we're very familiar with all of the surrounding markets because we service them all from Tacoma to Gig Harbor and south of here as well. So if those are areas that you want some more specifics on, feel free to reach out. Like Charity mentioned, we'd be happy to help you in those areas as well because they're all an interconnected market.
And if you've enjoyed this video, keep watching because the next one is going to be very informative as well.